Hello everyone. This is a video on the holistic approach that we have to consider when it comes to health in general, but more specifically, gut health. So this video is going to be in parts. In this specific part, we're going to talk about stress and its relation to gut health. Generally, let's start with the concept of health. Whenever we are thinking about health and how we should approach healing, we have to look at the individual and us, how we are manifesting health. So we manifest health in mindset, in our physical health, our spiritual health, how we are connecting with others, with nature, etc. This special video section is going to discuss picky eating. So I'm going to do it in parts, and hopefully I will not be wasting any time regarding that. So let's jump into the context of this. So eating disorders are basically things that we are doing in a wrong way, like we're eating bad food combinations, for example, we're eating processed food, junk food, all that it's part of an eating problem, right? An eating disorder. So eating disorders, as I can summarize it here, is either a nutrient or vitamin deficiency or emotional overwhelm or deficiency, because that can create the need to eat food, or even toxicity will create eating disorders, okay? So all these specific eating disorders will create a set of gut health problems or even whole physical manifestations of these disorders. So it can create cravings, it can create picky eating, so we stop accepting certain food because they're not appetizing, for example. We are always stressed, and that is caused by gut health and overall low gut microbiome. So there's a huge set of many things that will manifest due to eating disorders. So today we're going to discuss a specific eating disorder, which is emotional overwhelm. Okay, so that can create a lot of binge eating. Like many people see food as a relief, and we're not eating when we are hungry. We're not eating because of a necessity. We're just eating for enjoyment. And that is a problem, because that enjoyment is going to give us a short-term boost in dopamine, in happiness, which our body cannot depend on, because that short-term boost in happiness is going to create a series of health problems, and we're going to discuss that here. First of all, let's start with stress. In this section on the left, stress will trigger cortisol, epinephrine, released by the adrenal glands, which can slow down or stop digestion, affecting the gut-brain axis. So this stress hormone will affect the digestive system, because basically we're now in a fight or flight response. And so the body will shut down the digestive system to save the energy for other things, like running, for example, or breathing fast. That's why cortisol leads to several things like high blood pressure, digestive issues, nervous problem, just to name a few here. High blood sugar, because the adrenal gland controls sugar metabolism to a certain extent. It increases the heartbeat. So all that can be affected by cortisol. Here they mentioned that it weakens the immune system, although we all know that it's the lymphatic system. But what happens is, as the blood pressure slows down, the lymphatic activity will also slow down, because the lymphatic system is not dependent on the heart that much, but it doesn't have something to be moving. So it depends on alkalinity, it depends on breathing, and also it depends on a heartbeat to a certain extent, or blood flow to a certain extent. Cortisol in general will affect all these things. It can also weaken the movement of the lymphatic system. So that is stress in general and its relation to the digestive system or whole body health. Then we have the snacking, because now we're living in a society that always depends on snacking, as if we are only living to eat. We are always looking for snacks, we're looking for food to eat And that is partially addiction related and partially basically problems in the gut health. The snacking increases the risk for bad food combinations. Now we're eating, now we want to drink after that, and we are looking for more and more food to eat. And that can create a lot of food combinations that are wrong. And that can create nausea, we want to vomit, we want to start like hating food because of that. So in adults and even kids, that can happen where a lot of food combinations will make us avoid food in general, right? Or limit our food consumption. And it will also create a lot of cravings for sweets and salty food. So snacking will increase the risk for indigestion, which can create a lot of constipation in that regard. Going to the third point here, stress eating often involves highly processed, which is low in nutrient food, right? There's a lot of these processed food that are very fast to eat, snacks and stuff like that, even beverages that are basically processed and they are going to stimulate our body. That's why we are always going back to that food, for example. But these food are very low in nutrients, right? Causing more cravings because we are basically in need for food, because we inherently know, like in our innate nature, we know that food is going to give us nutrients. And since we are not getting enough nutrients from the food because of a low quality food intake, we're going to always ask for food. So it can create a craving to this stimulant, to this food, and also it can create picky eating to a certain extent. And I'm going to explain to you here, because many of these processed food will have toxins in them, will have additives, and also will not be digested properly. So if we're having indigestion here, which is causing constipation, if we're having toxicity from the food, all that indigested food, all that toxicity going in the gut, that will affect the bacteria in the gut, okay? And if we're having toxicity in the gut, low gut bacteria, we're going to have a set of health problems, including nervous problems, brain issues, pancreatic issues, you name it. Everything starts from the gut. And you can see that clearly if you look at iridology pictures. You can see many of the toxicity will start emerging from the gut. There are people who have leaky guts and all that. If we look at the human biology, we will notice that we have way more bacteria than we have human cells. So they outnumber us. We say that we are humans, but we are basically bacteriological humans. We are 99% bacteria more than cells. If you take that into context, our body depends on bacteria. Our digestion depends on bacteria. We have way more genes that are for bacteria than for human cells. And these genes are doing certain mechanism that is very important. So some of these bacteria is going to help us detox toxins, right? They will create neurotransmitters, vitamins. It will basically help us in digestion. We cannot digest food if we have low gut bacteria. It will also regulate the acidity in the body. It will also dissolve the acids, making them more alkaline. So generally, low gut microbiome is a very bad thing to have, right? And it will also create a lot of constipation. So looking at certain types of food, more specifically in the processed food and stuff like that, when it comes to stimulants, we can get a stimulant from a stressor that we are thinking about, or let's say an environmental stressor that can create a stress on the body. We can have a lot of stimulants from, let's say, sugary food, salty food, the processed food that is packed in additives and preservatives. All that can create a stimulation to the body, basically. And that stimulation will affect the adrenal glands, because the adrenal gland is the major gland that is responsible for stress. So whenever the body is introduced to a certain stressor, the adrenal gland is at the first priority there to act in according to maintain the body's homeostasis. So the adrenal gland here, if it's going to act too much, always act, it will come to a point where it's going to go into the hypo. Everyone has this capacity to fight something to a certain extent, but not forever. The same thing with the adrenal gland. It will come a point where it's going to be exhausted and going into this fatigue state. So let's talk about the alarm state and the general adaptation syndrome and its relation to stress. And basically any stressor, whether it's food or drug intake. So when we look at this first section of the general adaptation syndrome, the body is introduced to a stressor, okay? Whether it's an injection, whether it's a specific toxic food, for example, or let's say an environmental stressor that has to do with relationships, etc. That stressor will create an alarm stage for the body. For example, if we are eating or we have food in our body and we had this alarm stage, okay, the digestion will stop. Can you imagine? If we ate already and then we got stressed, digestion will be hypnotized. Or if we are eating and we are being stressed, that can affect digestion. There are so many things that will affect digestion, whether it's like bad posture, because that can create a stress on the respiratory system, on the diaphragm. We will not be breathing properly, and that can create indigestion because it's creating stress. The more that we look at the whole alarm stage in a more preventative way, the more that we will avoid stress on the body and on the digestive system. Because this alarm stage is caused by medications, by drugs, by stimulants, by environmental stressors. All that will create stress. So what happens when the alarm stage occurs, the body will go into a hyperstimulating stage. The nervous system is activated, the adrenal gland, the involuntary nervous system is activated. So the body will start resisting this stressor, okay? It will start resisting that stressor. It will not take too long to shut down after that because basically the body will not handle too much. So that's where like the heart rate increases, the respiratory system increases, but then it goes into hypo. And that's where the exhaustion comes into place. The adrenal glands gets weakened. And when the adrenal glands get weakened, sugar metabolism is affected, which creates like fungus, for example, and can also create diabetes, for example. So there's so many things that are related to the adrenal gland and the stress, especially when we're talking about not controlling our food intake in a proper manner. This is just one section. I will make another video to discuss the second.